You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, the Archaeology Podcast Network is starting a new 3-tier membership system in July. All your favorite shows will always be free, but we're offering a little extra for those that want it. Check out arcpodnet.com/members for details. That's arcpodnet.com/members for details on our awesome new member site. Thanks for supporting us.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeotech Podcast, episode 56. I'm your host, Chris Webster, with my special co-host today, Richie Cruz. On today's show, we talk about the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference and what it means or what it doesn't mean for archaeology. Let's get to it. All right, so welcome to the Archaeotech Podcast. We've got a slightly different format today because I have a guest host, and for possibly one of the first times ever in Archaeotech, I've done this a few times with other podcasts, but we have Richie Cruz in the studio, and we have a studio. That's the real shocker right there. Richie, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad. Nice. Yeah. Richie's a longtime field tech, worked all over the country, a lot in the West here. He worked with me a couple years ago in California, and I can't believe that's a couple years ago now.
I know.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is the Archaeotech Podcast, and we're recording this on Friday, June 9th. So I know it's a couple weeks back from when you're hearing this. But what we're talking about, because I'm willing to bet most of our listeners, because there's only a few like uber geeks out there like myself that watched this thing, and Richie who watched clips of it. Yeah. But we're going to talk about what they call WWDC that Apple had on June 5th, I believe it was, or 4th, whatever that Monday was. Anyway, every year they have what they call their Worldwide Developers Conference. And the thing that kicks it all off at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Monday, every time they do this every year, starts off with the Apple keynote, they call it, by Tim Cook, who's the current CEO of Apple. And that's usually when they have their chance. And WWDC is known as a software as a software highlight, right? Usually they'll do software announcements at WWDC. Occasionally they'll do a hardware announcement, but most of the time it's software announcements, big software announcements. And sort of, yeah. Well, they try to. And then in the fall they'll do a product announcement a lot of times. And these days it's usually iPhone, sometimes iPad, but they're not consistent anymore. No, so I mean, you can have an iPad announcement in March. I mean, they just don't care. They'll do whatever they want. So. But what we're going to talk about is what happened at WWDC and some of the things that might be, I don't know, applicable to archaeology. Yeah. So,
oh, really? Because I thought I was going to ask you. All right. I had just jumped to PC, convinced me that Apples are still more awesome, especially considering they cost so much more.
Well, it really depends on what you want to do. First off, I would say that like any gear, Apple is going to be more expensive, of course. If you're just going to buy a laptop, even the base laptop, a similar sized PC device, if you're just talking size, is going to probably be a third of the cost, right? If you're going to the Apple desktop, there's several options. Most people will probably go with the iMac, the all-in-one, which is going to start again around, I think it starts around $1,200 for that. It might be a little less. Yeah. I think that's a little less. You can get the 21-inch size. Oh. But that being said, it all depends on what you want to do. Because if you spend $400 on a Dell tower system and then it dies on you in less than a year, that could be an issue. And the other thing is, are you, especially from an archaeological standpoint, let's say you're an archaeology firm and you have a whole bunch of computers. Yeah. You spend a ton of money on those. And do you want to have an IT person in your department that their only job is to keep these computers not only updated, but upgraded and operational and continuing to run? Because I guarantee you, if you go with Apple, there's going to be less of that. Especially because when you buy an Apple product, if you buy it brand new, even if you didn't buy top of the line, like if you bought brand new, but you didn't option it up as high as you could possibly get it. You didn't get the fantastic processor, graphics unit, all that stuff, the big hard drive. Even if you didn't do any of that, that computer is probably still going to last you 5, 6, 7 years, depending on what you want to do. And while we're talking about it, you can dispel the rumors. You can run ArcGIS on an Apple computer. The big stumbling block with that was the Intel processor. When Apple went to an Intel processor, which it's still using, you gained the software capability to run.
I got one of the first ones.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I remember when I was in grad school in 2010, I walked in one day into the GIS lab, which had 3 rows of desks with probably 10 computers each on there, so probably about 30 computers. It was closed over the weekend. I was pissed because I had to work on my project. And then I came in on Monday morning. All the Dell computers in there have been replaced with iMacs.
Neat.
And they booted up into Windows. You never even saw the Apple operating system. They booted straight into Windows, opened right up onto a Windows desktop with ArcGIS sitting right there.
But I think that's part of the problem with Apple, though, because I feel like in the olden days, there was more of a difference. I don't know, like they used to be known as like if you were a graphic artist or a video editor, but now you can do that on any computer.
Well, and that's a good point. I think the reason to go with Apple personally these days is not necessarily for the computing power, because you're right. You can get the computing power of any Apple device, any Apple laptop or Apple desktop system in a PC, hands down, and you could probably do it cheaper.
Yeah,
honestly,
a lot cheaper. But what you have to do to get that is you either let's take iPads as an example. Yeah,
the iPad, the normal sized 9.7 inch iPad, not the iPad Mini, not the iPad Pro, but the regular iPad. If you were to get a comparable product in an Android device, it's probably the Samsung Galaxy Tab, right? That's probably a similar comparable product from a hardware standpoint, quality and material standpoint, all that stuff. They're the same price, okay? The Samsung is actually a little bit more expensive depending on the options that you get.
Really?
So, yeah. But they both have the glass screen, the awesome case on them. You know, like by case, I mean like the aluminum frame around them and all that stuff. So they're good and sturdy. If you're going to do that, if you're going to get like a cheap desktop computer and then throw a bunch of expensive components inside of it to make it more powerful, which is what you'll probably have to do unless you spend the same money you to spend on an Apple anyway to get that same thing in a PC, then it just requires a lot more effort and a lot more work, I think, for most people than they want to put into it. You and I, we don't care about that kind of stuff.
No.
There's a girl I follow on Facebook. You know, she's got her. She's such an uber geek. I love it. And she set up her whole computer. She set it up not just for gaming, but doing other things too. Yeah. And she built this thing from scratch. She bought the tower. She bought all these things. Yeah. But like 95% of people out there can't do that.
Really? Because I did it in an evening, and more importantly, when I bought my components, I set up my computer so it'll be uber reliable. That's why I went with the water cooling. Well,
right, but you're one person.
Yeah.
But now let's change the roles. Now you're the uber geek IT guy at a CRM firm with 20 people, and they need 20 of those setups. Are you still going to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you leave, who's going to maintain that? You know, when you move on and you get snapped up by Uber, you know, I mean, that's the big thing. I think if we're just going to keep this, you know, as not a straight tech podcast, but an archaeotech podcast, I think what we're looking at here is what's the easiest, simplest solution for a CRM firm of any size to set up, whether you need any size. I mean, unless you're a lone wolf like myself most of the time and you've just got like one computer, you can do whatever you want, right? We're not talking about those people. We're talking about somebody that has at least a couple, 2 or 3 employees where they have to buy them equipment. Yeah. They don't have their own equipment. And all the way up to an office of infinite size. If it doesn't matter how big. Somebody needs to maintain all that. And rather than pay an IT person $40,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, or an IT team to maintain my shitty computers and my upgrades and all that stuff, I'd rather buy something right out of the gate that doesn't need a lot of maintenance for a number of years, just works, and take that money and spend it on something else. You know what I mean? That's all about efficiency.
Wait a second. How many times have you brought your current oh my God, your current laptop, your MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
in to be repaired?
Twice actually.
See?
But I put that thing through the paces. If I'd had a regular, you know, if I'd had a PC laptop that wasn't set up for that kind of thing, that had a plastic case on it, that had, you know, it would have been destroyed, I feel like, a lot more times. This is a 2011 MacBook Pro. I've had it for 6 years. I've taken it literally around the world.
That's true.
I've been all over the place. It's been in innumerable security scans through TSA, all kinds of stuff. And the only thing let's see, I had the battery replaced last year, which is about right for last summer. I mean, it's 5 years on the battery. It was still lasting a few hours, but it's lithium ion and was starting to expand and push the keyboard out, which is how those things fail.
Ooh.
So I took it in. It was $200. I replaced the battery.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I had happen to it was the hard drive did crash once, about 4 years in. But that was a spinning optical hard drive, which are going out of favor.
True.
Okay. And I would take that thing and I would just close my laptop. It'd still be spinning and I'd throw it in my backpack. And it lasted 4 years of doing that.
Ooh.
And it was really some nasty environments. I mean, I'm a CRM archaeologist and I bought that when I was on the road.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was after grad school. And I was
that too.
Yeah, I was traveling around. It was going in my backpack. It was going into hotel rooms. It was going all over the place.
I also remember you told me it was the last computer you were ever going to need.
We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. The last laptop I'll ever buy. I know. And I'm currently waiting on my brand new Apple MacBook Pro. Well, see, Apple changed it. It changed the game though.
I know.
You know, they added a few features. They've optioned it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So now it's become a thing.
Well, I mean, technology moves on. Like, I mean, not to go slightly off the rails, but like video editing, like it's so much easier now with my current setup than it was back then when I had to convert all my videos into the file format the computer could read.
Yeah.
And then wait for it all to render. So it's like, 50 million hours.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a long time. And if you're going to do stuff like that, that's another thing too. A lot of people will do processing of GIS files and things like that. And a lot more people are getting into 3D photogrammetry and doing processing with like PhotoScan and things like that. You really need some computing power to not make those processes take forever.
Yeah.
PhotoScan has, if you're going to make a 3D model, you've got to go through like 5 or 6 different steps that render each time.
Really?
And you can batch those things if you do it right, but each one of these steps, depending on how big your model is and how many data points you have, I mean, which is usually in the millions, even for a small model, it's usually in the millions of points. It's doing all these little things, and I mean, it can take hours. Michael Ashley, who's been on this podcast before, he does a lot of stuff, and he's done these things on his laptop where he's just set the model to start going at night and then just gone to sleep. And then hopefully it's ready in the morning.
Oh, wait, to bring it back to the Apple thing, didn't we just watch something about that? Sort of. I mean,
sort of. Yeah. I mean, if we're getting into 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things to bring it back to WWDC was they showed, and Richie and I were talking about this, which is why we wanted to hit record on this so we can have the conversation. But one of the cool things that they showed during the demos was from Wingnut Games or Wingnut Development or whoever they are. But they showed augmented reality. There was a big table sitting on the stage, and then they were using an iPad Pro with a new chip in it that you can buy now today. I've got an iPad Pro 12.1 inch, but it doesn't have the brand new chip in it.
Yeah.
Which means I have an iPad Pro for sale, so I can get a new chip. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so they were just had the screen pointed at this table, and the system was designed to pick up the surface of the table and then render this entire battle scene on top of it. And I thought it was fantastic. The computing power it was taking in that iPad to render all the things that were taking place. And not only that, he wasn't just watching something, he was playing a video game. Yeah. I don't know how he was doing it, what his controls were, but somehow he was manipulating something, and it was all these moving pieces and all these things. Well, we don't really need that for archaeology. But let's imagine, I wrote a blog post about this years ago when Google Glass first came out. I thought glasses were going to be, we're really going to take off a lot more than they have. But the technology there, I think the market just isn't there yet. So the technology hasn't progressed.
I think they approached it from the wrong direction because that was something more that should have been industrial and then came into the civilian sector because like the pushback was crazy. Yeah, literally crazy.
It was crazy. Like glass holes.
Yeah. It's like it's like GPSs. You start out with trimbles, and then eventually people are using them on their hikes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have one on my watch for a hike just this week. And that's goes from expensive devices to something on my watch that tracks where I'm going. So
or REI lifestyle accessory.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's a good point. I think you're right. Start from a industrial standpoint and then bring it down. But they started from a everyday person standpoint. You're going to wear these glasses that are going to record everything and take pictures and do all this stuff. People are like, no, that's not going to happen.
It's creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy. So, but one of the things that's important, that's interesting about the AR that Apple showed off, and they weren't really showing off AR. I mean, they're showing off support for that because the new macOS High Sierra has VR, virtual reality, and AR support, so they can do different things. It really just takes a lot of computing power to be able to do that stuff, and now they've put that in there to be able to do these things. But where I see it going for archaeology, this is what Richie and I were talking about, is the ability, we now have the ability in multiple different ways, whether it's just on Trimbles or tablets or whatever, to record information digitally in the field. So if we can record attribute data and positional data digitally in the field, which we do, we've been recording digital positional data for a decade plus, right? So if we can do that and then just get it over to a device like the iPad the crew chief is using or something, like a new iPad with a new chip in it. Doesn't have to be the 12-inch. The 10-inch will do it. If we can get it into that device, then you don't need to have a background rendered because it's augmented reality. For those that don't know, virtual reality is in a completely constructed world that you're in. Augmented reality is digital objects printed on your reality around you. Yeah. Right. So you hold the tablet up. I'm doing these hand motions as though we're on video, but I can't not do it. You hold the tablet up across your site, and if your field techs are transmitting stuff to you as they do it in real time, like I finished this feature, boom, it transmits to my iPad. I finished a couple artifacts, bam, it transmits to the crew chief's iPad. Then the crew chief ideally should be able to lift this thing up, go into AR mode, and then see, just like people see on Pokemon Go, where they see their little gyms out in the distance. I've always imagined that those are features, or you can see the sight boundary glowing up in the distance. You can see, artifacts and maybe color coded. So I know, that's those are tin cans, those are ceramics, those are glass, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I was also thinking you could also be used to send information straight back to the office. That way, there isn't someone on the other end of the phone saying, you're just moving too slowly. And then, you're I'm back on the phone. You're not here. You don't see the terrain or how many sites we get, because how many projects have we been on like that? Where someone's like, you're just not moving fast enough on purpose.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. As long as you have cell service, there's no reason why the stuff can't upload in real time.
Ooh, it might even obviate the need to have managers on site. Just on that cruise.
Maybe. It might eliminate the need to have permitted people on site.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you still have like a crew chief and stuff, but now you're supposed to have somebody who's permitted by the BLM in Nevada specifically. And other states don't have this problem, but here in Nevada and then on other federal land, for sure, you're supposed to have somebody permitted on site. Yeah. I'm going out on a project next week, which is in the past from when this podcast is coming out. But the only reason I'm going out there, I'm subcontracting with another company. The only reason I'm out there is because that company's permit didn't come in time. So they don't have a permit to be able to go out there. Yeah. So they can't do it. So I'm going out there because I have a permit. And that's how important that is. Now, if we... Richie said, if the office has the ability, the permitted archaeologist has the ability to check in real time, check on sites, check on progress, see the map, all that stuff in real time. Why do they need to be there?
See? Well, I mean, it's like 100 years ago, you needed to have, I don't know what laws or states it is, but I know you had to, if you drove a car, you had to have a mechanic with you or someone holding a flag in front of it to warn people.
Right.
But of course, you don't need that once, cars are practically automatic enough.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, our timing is a little weird on this one because my setup is different, but according to my recorder, we're about due for a break. So I'm hoping that stays true and we didn't go too long or too short. But let's take a short break and then come back and keep talking about the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference 2017 in just a minute.
Oh, and don't forget why we miss turtlenecks.
Hey everyone, the Archaeology Podcast Network is starting a new 3-tier membership system in July. All your favorite shows will always be free, but we're offering a little extra for those that want it. Check out arcpodnet.com/members for details. That's arcpodnet.com/members for details on our awesome new member site. Thanks for supporting us.
All right, we're back. So let's keep talking about WWDC and some of the new things that they've announced. One thing that Richie and I were talking about is the $5,000 iMac. So we spent the first part of this podcast talking about well, why would I even go Apple? And now I'm going to spend the next few minutes trying to convince Richie to buy a $5,000 computer for his archaeology firm he's going to start.
Oh, man. It's just, I don't know. It seems cool, but then is it really an improvement for someone who's doing something like this?
Probably not. I'm going to say that right off the bat. The iMac Pro is what we're talking about. Yeah. And just a little bit of background. Apple came out with, I think probably 3 years ago now or more, they came out with everybody calls the trash can, which was the Mac Pro, which was not very upgradable and started again at $4,000 or $5,000, but didn't come with keyboard, trackpad, or monitor. No. It's just the computer. So you needed to add all that stuff onto it. So really to get a decent setup out of the box of that thing, you had to spend probably $7,000.
And that's when I started seeing the videos where Apple's lost the track and they're no longer meant for professionals.
Exactly. So that thing was just like crazy over the top. It was professionals like to upgrade their stuff manually and do all those kinds of things. Like me. Yeah, exactly. So that's why the iMac line still stayed in the realm of, I would say, commercial professionals that don't want to hassle with that stuff, but still want the power and the quality, right?
Yeah, but then how many, like, when I'm not going to say the company, but like, you know, when we were working together, like the office had like $200 or $300 computers on every desk.
Yeah, well, you know, and those were fantastic computers, weren't they? You know,
sure.
I mean, they were just.
I mean, I was doing some for graphic design.
I mean, you can do stuff. Don't get me wrong. You know, you can make anything work. It all just depends on how much money you want to spend over time. But I would say right now, anybody working in a CRM firm, unless if you're a larger firm and you've got really some specialized departments, like maybe even the GIS department or an illustration department where you are doing. If I had that kind of department, I would be sending over all the 3D models to be created. I would be sending that type of stuff over there. And then you might want to buy one of the iMac Pros, you know, because even just out of the box with the cheapest one, which are now space gray, by the way. So that's really cool. That's a reason right there to get one. Right out of the box, they're $5,000, but they're i7 12 core processor, which is enormous. And you can option them
up to 18 core.
You can option it up to 18, but your $5,000 one's not going to have an 18 core processor.
Boo.
So no. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is, that just basically means you can think of it as almost horsepower on your car. You know, number of cylinders. If you've got a 4-cylinder engine, you're not going to be able to produce that much thrust. But if you have an 8-cylinder engine, you're not going to necessarily go faster, but you'll have a lot more power. You'll be able to get there quicker, things like that. That's what the cores are in the processor. So
that's why your average phone now has 8.
Yeah, exactly. So, and just let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so I would say very specialized if you're doing stuff. And, you know, there are some firms out there that do actually do a lot of video processing and things like that because they do a lot of public archaeology outreach. They put together things.
And, like, you know, I was also thinking, like, it's still cheaper than hiring an illustrator. And how many people are still around doing that, like illustrating artifacts and stuff?
I know. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I think, again, very specific use cases for the iMac Pro, they call it, which I mentioned the trash can iMac, the Mac Pro, because it seems like Apple listened to what people said about the trash can, about not being for pro users, and now they're trying to scale it back and say, okay, well, it's still not very upgradable, the iMac Pro. I mean, you really kind of have to buy the one you want and then hope that works. But that being said, it has a lot of ports off the back.
True.
You can plug a ton of things into it, and it can handle it. The iMac Pro right out of the gate can drive not only the 27-inch display of the iMac Pro, because it's an all-in-one computer, but it can drive 2 additional 5K displays.
True.
So that's a lot of graphical computing power out of one machine. So right out of the box, how much do you need to upgrade?
That's true.
You know?
Of course, companies also make strange decisions, like how many, oh God, what are those giant boxes? What am I thinking of? Oh God, you know how to use them, not the robots, but the little mapping machines. Where no one out west here has one.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's not a transit. The other one, the computerized one.
Total Station.
Yeah. Yeah. Like how many companies don't have those?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's right. So, you know, I mean, I worked for a company just 7-8 years ago that didn't have a Trimble. We had a theodolite. We actually had a theodolite.
Really?
Yeah. They had the dude out there in the distance with the Stadia rod and the numbers, and the guy recording the top and bottom number because they do the trigonometry to find out the distance.
Yeah.
And then they drop those into a fancy Excel spreadsheet that they'd created to automatically do the trig for them.
Wait, that's crazy. Because I worked with a company that had a transit, and they paid me $20-something an hour to stand there with a rod while some dude entered it into a notebook. And it's like, and yet you don't want to buy a nice computer.
You could have rented a total station for less than it cost you to hold that Stadia rod.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what people don't get. I think that's the bulk of the Apple conversation too, is which is why I go with Apple. My thought, I've always operated under the principle of I'm going to spend the money, even if I don't really have it, I'll find it somehow, because in the long run, it's cheaper. You have to look at the big picture and say, in the long run, is it cheaper for me to do this? Like, for example, my truck. I bought a Toyota Tacoma for these projects because in the long run, me buying that truck was going to be cheaper and more cost effective for me than renting in the long run. And
I know of at least one PI here in town who was actually paying people to straighten out flags and keep them oil. It's like, how much more money is it than how much money you're saving versus just buying new flags?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I see the environmental impact of just buying flags every project, but on the other hand, I don't care. Yeah, flags are cheap.
You're paying someone 20-something an hour.
Yeah, for a 20-cent flag.
Yes.
I mean, you can get flags like 100 a bundle, 100 flags in a bundle for $10 from Forestry Supply.
See?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's the kind of stuff people do. And they're like, oh, we just need work for these guys to do, this busy work. I would rather have somebody, there's plenty of other work. I would rather have somebody, even if I don't ever use the information, rather than pay somebody for an afternoon on a rain day to fix screens or, buy screens that don't need fixing. How about that? Which they're out there. Don't tell me they're not, but you just buy shitty screens. I'll tell you that right now. But buy the good ones so they don't need fixing all the time. Buy the screen inserts so they just go zip, 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 put in a new insert, you're done. Yeah. But the same thing with like pin flags and stuff like that. I would never pay somebody to do that. I would pay somebody to sit. If it's a rain day, I'm going to put you in front of a computer and say, listen, we want to do research on this area. Yeah. We want to write a paper for this conference in 6 months. Why don't you start the initial research on this and get rolling on that? That's what I would pay for somebody for. If I had to just cover their hours, if I'm just trying and find hours, there's many things people can do rather than straighten pin flags.
That's how I got into graphic design, or how I taught myself graphic design.
Yeah. How about that? Training.
Yeah.
How about that? Teach people how to do stuff,
But then they might get better. Rails. That's a crazy thought. I know. They might get better.
So we're going off the rails on this a little bit. Let's bring it back to tech a little bit. Some of the other things that Apple announced that is available now are the upgraded iPads. They have the new, I want to say it's the X10 chip or something like that. They were the X9s they have in there now or something like that. Either way, it's an upgraded chip. So more powerful. They made it so the minimum size you can get now, I think, is 64 gigabytes. It used to be 32. 32 are completely gone now. Memory's becoming cheap.
Good.
Yeah. And my one piece of advice on that is get the small one, quite frankly. You don't need the big one. I mean, you're used to downloading your Trimbles every night. True. You're used to doing that stuff. Photographs don't take up as much space as you think. And if you're offloading that stuff at the end of every day, which you should be doing it throughout the day. But if you're offloading it at the end of the day, we had on the El Centro project and on the China Lake project after that, we had 16 gigabyte iPads, and we never filled them up. And we took pictures all day.
And you can always set them to automatically update to a secure Dropbox account or Google Photos.
If you have service. On the project Richie was on with us, we had service, so we could have done that. On the China Lake project, we didn't most of the time. Yeah. So, but I did have wireless USB flash drives, those SanDisk flash drives that we would upload to. So really not that big a deal. It's better for data security. I feel like it's like the podcast we talked about on, was it Archaeotech a while back with Abby Smith Rumsey. It was right after I had moved. We were talking about space efficiency and things like that. And my wife and I intentionally moved into a smaller place. Yeah. And I said, though, I just started viewing houses, and I view the space on my devices the same way. I was viewing a house like, if I live in a 3,000 square foot house, I'm going to fill it up with 3,000 square foot worth of shit. Yeah. If I have a library in my house where I keep my books and it can hold 10 million books, I'm probably going to put 10 million books in there. I mean, Richie works at a bookstore sometimes, and if you guys were to expand that bookstore, you'd probably fill it with books immediately.
Oh my god, that's not too hard.
Things will fill just like a goldfish will grow to the size of its tank that you put it in. That's why you put a goldfish in a small tank. It will grow to the size that it can, that the environment can support. So if you have a 256 gigabyte iPad because you bought the big one, or a 512 or whatever, you're just going to put a whole bunch of crap on there, and then you're never going to take it off. And that is bad practice. That is bad practice for data security.
Or you're just going to be watching movies when you're supposed to be monitoring.
That is another problem entirely.
I never did that ever.
Hey, you guys know Netflix, you can download stuff from Netflix now, right? So,
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the Netflix movies, you can download the Netflix TV show episodes. You can download in Netflix and watch them in the Netflix app offline.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe that's part of the app of the day segment.
Oh. We should talk about the Amazon thing at some point, if you didn't know about that.
I did. You mean coming into... Well, we'll talk. We'll get it. We'll get to it in a second. So, all right. So let's see. What else? There's a new operating system coming out. Well, that's actually kind of big.
2 of them.
Yeah. Well, iOS 11 coming out for the iPad and iPhone line.
Oh, 3 of them then.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're talking about Watch and So there's okay. So that's good. So iOS, let's get that out of the way because that's actually really good to know. If you've got any apps that you're using for fieldwork, iOS 11 could break them. So
you mean just like all the other ones?
Well, no. This is whenever you have a whole number update, you have to really watch it. Okay, so you're going from iOS 10.3 point something, whatever we're on right now, maybe even 10.4. I think we're in 10.3 point something right now.
Yeah.
And we're jumping straight to 11. There's probably going to be some incremental upgrades because this isn't going to happen until September, October timeframe.
Yeah.
The beta is out for developers now. The public beta you can sign up for will be ready in like a month or two. I think a month or so. So you can try it out, which is what I would do. I would actually sign up for the public beta. Now a beta of software could fail anyway. True. It's not the final version of the software. They're working out the bugs. They're trusting you to find those bugs so you can work them out. That's what a beta is. But if you have a fleet of iPads that you use in the field, I'd probably put it on one of those devices as soon as you possibly can because you need to see how the apps you're using are going to work because iOS 11, iOS 10.3 changed the file system for iOS. It went to the Apple file system.
Yeah.
So that changed that, which apps had to scramble to update. But iOS 11 is designed for what they call 64-bit apps, not 32-bit apps.
Oh, yeah.
The iPhone 5, and I don't know what version of iPad because I didn't mention it and I haven't researched it, but the iPhone 5S and 5C, I believe, are 32-bit systems. So that's the limit for upgradability for iOS 11. If you have one of those devices and back, you won't be able to upgrade to iOS 11 because it only works on 64-bit devices, which is anything over that.
Right.
And if you... So there's that. Chances are, if you run in an iPad 2 or something like that, an iPad Air 2 or an iPad Mini 2 or something like that, you're probably not going to be able to upgrade. Probably going to need a much newer device. Something probably within the last 3 years, I would say, just to put a number on it. So the other side of that coin is even if you've upgraded to the 64-bit system, the 10.3 point whatever, apps that were produced in the 32-bit system are still running on it. Apple's allowed that backwards compatibility. They're still running on it. Developers don't have to do anything as far as I know. But if you upgrade to iOS 11, all those 32-bit apps are going to fail.
Really?
Every single one of them. So if you're using an app, go check the App Store. If the last time it says that was updated is like 2015 or even 2016 at this point, the developer has stopped supporting it. And if the developer stops supporting it, they may or may not upgrade it, and you need to start looking for another solution.
Or just
in case.
Or
don't upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got to watch that because the operating system will try to force you to upgrade. It will pester you,
It'll actually give up after a while. As someone who has an iPad 1 still, it'll just give up.
Well, it'll give up because it won't be upgradable.
Yeah.
If you have a device that is upgradable, it will pester you until it's not upgradable.
See?
Yeah, I have an iPad 1 as well. It's our alarm clock, or it's our clock in our bedroom. I don't get upgrades on that anymore, and sometimes I have to figure out how to use it.
I just use it to read the New York Times.
Nice.
Which supposedly isn't even news anymore.
Right. Fake news, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, that's the warning with iOS 11. Make sure check the last time your app was upgraded. Any apps that you use on your tablet or your phone, for that matter, in the field.
Yeah.
and see when they were last updated. And then even if you're concerned with it, maybe even email a developer and say, hey, are you guys going to upgrade for iOS 11 before you do that?
And then they ask you for a lot of money.
Another one we can go over real fast is WatchOS 4. There's supposed to be a new Apple Watch rumored to be coming out probably in the spring. That's when they came out with the last one. And I bought the Series 2 last fall because it added the GPS chip and a faster processor. Neat. So it's got onboard GPS on the Apple Watch 2. And it's waterproof, which is great. I swim with this. It detects your swim stroke that you're doing. Like if you change your stroke, it detects that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does all kinds of cool things. The one doesn't do that.
Wait, do they still cost about $500?
Oh, they never were $500. They were like $250 for the cheapest one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at the Garmin one that has Android built into it, and that's $500.
No, these you can get an Apple Watch for $250, I believe, maybe $350. I think it's $250. I don't know. There's two different sizes, and they all have the same memory, the same everything. There's not the only thing that changes with the price really is the watch band that you get. But I would just say get the sport band for the cheapest Apple Watch, and then go aftermarket and get a different band. Yeah. You know, I've got like 3 other bands that I bought from other companies.
Really?
All Apple's bands are expensive and ridiculous. So, yeah, they're all crap. So, but the sport band for Archaeologist is actually. I've got the orange one on right now. It comes with the black one, and well, depending on which watch you get, it could come with like the rose gold one, like my wife got. But anyway, the new watch, I'm not going to recommend or say anything about it because we don't know anything about the new watch. Yeah. It's supposed to be a different redesign. There's some leaks about it, but who knows? It's too far out to speculate, so we won't do that. But WatchOS 4 should be adding some new functionality that will be good. It's still a little bit unclear because nobody can run WatchOS 4 yet, not even in beta. So it's a little interesting, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because most people don't have Apple Watches that are listening to this. Probably, I've only met a few.
I see so many of them now.
Yeah, but not on Archaeologist arms.
That's true.
Yeah, I was just at SAAs. I didn't see a single one.
Really?
Yeah. So,
well, those people never tried climbing a rock face with a GPS in their hands.
I hear you. So, I think that's going to revolutionize everything. Is nobody. You'll still have somebody with a sub-meter GPS, and it might not be a Trimble, it might be a unit attached to an iPad, but everybody else will be able to tell where they're at because they can just look down at their smartwatch and say, oh, I'm still on track. And it can even, if you set it up right and you get the right apps, and when this stuff starts to get developed, it could even like tap your wrist gently to tell you you're off track.
That's why I was looking at the Garmin, because it's got, it's got the, Garmin sort of level antenna on it.
Like the lane departure almost on that. Yeah. So, and some of the Samsung ones actually, I know will tap. Apple just taps on it because it's not big enough. But some of the like the Samsung Gear 2, I think the big round one they have, that will tap on the left or right side to indicate turn left, turn right when you have turn by turn directions on. That's pretty sweet. Yeah, it taps on the left or right side of the watch face.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. When Apple gives me turn by turn directions, it just taps and says you need to look down at it to know which direction to go.
Yeah, but then we'll get rid of the time-honored tradition of saying you're crossing my line. Get back on your line.
I know. Future archaeologists won't even know what that means. Yeah. So anyway, some more software stuff. Mac, if you are running Apple computers at your office or wherever, Mac OS High Sierra is coming out, and according to Craig Federici, it's fully baked. He said. That was his joke. It's High Sierra. So I know. Lame jokes. Anyway, that switches all the Mac operating systems over to the Apple file system. Again,
really?
Yeah, higher bit, 64-bit device. Most of the Mac computers out there these days, all of them are 64-bit. So if you're running an older system, even my 2011 MacBook Pro is 64-bit. Yeah. So chances are you don't have a 32-bit device out there, but if you do, you probably aren't even able to upgrade to the current operating system, let alone the next one coming out. So, but it does add a lot more functionality. For those of you maybe a few cycles back on all your devices, what Apple's trying to do is make all the operating systems more similar. Windows already kind of beat them to the punch on that because the Windows Phone and the Windows Surface, all that stuff just runs Windows. Yeah. And it all looks the same, which I kind of appreciate. Even the Trimble running Windows CE still just looks like Windows.
See?
So
and everyone knows how to use it.
And everyone knows how to use it. It's actually genius. I'll give them that. So Apple is trying to do the same thing by making all their stuff, and they're not making the mobile devices become more desktop-like. They're making the desktop become more mobile-like, which is kind of different than Windows. That's going the other direction.
Yeah.
Because Apple, true to their form, They want everything to kind of be dumbed down a little bit and just make it so the lowest common denominator can use their device, not the highest common denominator. So,
True.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That makes me think, don't they have like an Alexa competitor now?
And that, you're right. It's called HomePod.
That's such a lame name.
It is a lame name. And it's $350 and won't be ready until December.
I mean, why do I want to call out HomePod? Do this. HomePod, do that.
It's still Siri. Still Siri. You still say Siri. So my question is, and they didn't address this in the thing, if you still address it, and I'm going to turn all my devices on right now, but if you still address it by saying, hey, Siri, and my phone just turned on, my iPad probably did.
Why not just call it Siri Home?
Well, here's the thing. You need to change it. You need to call it something else because I'm wearing an Apple Watch. I've got an iPad Pro sitting here, and I've got my iPhone. And if I say those magic words, or if I just set it into, and you're not listening on earbuds,
yeah,
all the Apple devices in the room just turned on and just picked up and said,
you can't customize it?
No.
What?
Yeah, you can't customize it. I have that problem all the time when I'm using Siri because I always have my phone and my watch on me, right? So sometimes if I got my phone in my hand, but I'm trying to talk to my watch, it'll compete with itself.
That's crazy.
It's totally crazy. And if you're trying to do that with your HomePod, I guarantee you, you're home.
Yeah.
And your phone is sitting right there. Your iPad's sitting right there. Eventually, your computer is going to be able to hear that too. Right now, you have to push a button for Siri to work on computer.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they're going to make that voice at some point.
But that's so simple. Like my phone, I used to just go 10YR43 and then ask it to do something.
Oh my God. That's genius. I love it. On the computer, you can still turn on an activation word. I actually did that for mine. I think it's off right now, but of course, for mine, I say computer. Because I love Star Trek so much.
Wait, you didn't ask it for Earl Grey?
I did not. Tea Earl Grey hot. Yeah. Anyway, man, if you could do that, just have it hook up to like Alexa or something, and then somebody just delivers you Earl Grey tea.
See?
That's hot. That'd be great. I should just say pizza, pepperoni, hot. Anyway, we're just about out of time on the segment. Actually, we're way over time. So
What?
But we'll take it into a third one. So let's go ahead and take a break real quick, and we'll come back. I'm not sure we'll do our app of the day since all we're talking about is software and kind of apps and stuff like that.
So our software of the day, we'll just talk about Amazon.
There you go. We'll bring it up. All right, back in a second. This episode of the CRM Archaeology Podcast is made possible by Codify Incorporated. Codify is a California benefit corporation that can help you with your digital archaeological needs. Visit codify.com today to find out how Codify can help you go paperless in 2017. That's www.codify.com. Now back to the show.
Alrighty. Well, today, what was it? I was looking on Facebook, where I get all my news now, apparently. Especially the Breitbart stuff, for some reason. Because, I have the wrong friends. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at, apparently, it's no longer unlimited data, even though you're paying for it, and they're starting to delete people's data.
And that is for...
Oh, their Prime service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is that for, like, they usually say unlimited music storage and things like that with Prime, so they're starting to delete stuff?
Yeah, they, had their Dropbox competitor is no longer unlimited.
Wow.
So it's a lie.
That's crazy.
Just like cake is a lie.
Nice. And it's crazy because a lot of stuff use Amazon Web Services, it's called, for storage and just routing of things. So,
see?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So if you're using Amazon Prime and you're using storage options for Amazon Prime, to start looking at your stuff. But that's so crazy that they can do that. I actually didn't see that news story.
Yeah.
I know. All I saw was stuff about how McCain was going crazy in the last couple of days. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I didn't hear anything about that. So did they have a timeline or any reasons or what else is in there?
I think people are just saving too much crap.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, plus I was just thinking about it in terms of Dropbox, because you pay for a certain number of stuff, and a lot of people have stuff backed up on what they think are secure servers, but are they really secure?
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing about Dropbox is Dropbox used to be, and please somebody let me know if I'm wrong, because I think I'm right about this, but Dropbox used to use Amazon Web Services for their stuff, but Dropbox very recently changed everything over to their own server system.
Ooh.
So Dropbox isn't on AWS anymore. And part of that, because Dropbox kind of started saying the same thing. What was it? It was like, because people put everything on there. I have a Dropbox for Business account. I have a 5 terabyte account. I pay a healthy sum for that too. But all my business stuff, the Archaeology Podcast Network, everything is stored on there. So I need that kind of space. But it was like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I got this email. I get emails from Dropbox all the time. They're
Same
always
here.
sending crap out, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time I don't read them, but something caught my eye and I took a look at it with the business account. And I think with the pro account as well, but I can't remember. You get what they call forever undelete, which is great and scary all at the same time. So when you delete something off your computer, if you have it attached to Dropbox, it actually doesn't delete. It just stays on a Dropbox server in limbo somewhere. And you can always recover that file. So I can recover a file. I've had Dropbox for Business over 2 years now. I can recover files from 2 years ago. So if I know where to find them, and that's a little more of a different discussion. It's a little more complicated. But
True.
This email that came out like 2 months ago said, hey, glad you're enjoying Dropbox. We're making it so you have to opt in to forever undelete now. Otherwise, if you don't, it's just going to be, I think it was 120 days or 90 days or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you didn't within a certain period of time hit the button in that email that says I opt in to forever undelete, you no longer have it and will never get it again.
Holy crap. You should have brought this up on another Archaeotech.
I don't know if I did or not. I know we talked about it on something. I can't remember what it was, but might have been just conversations. But yeah, that was sneaky.
Yeah.
Real sneaky, because it's part of your plan to have forever undelete. And I don't know if they're not offering that anymore for new accounts. And if they're just the only people that have it are grandfathered in and hit that button in their email. I don't know. I honestly don't know. So...
Well, I think it's interesting. It doesn't seem like that long ago that you were trying to convince companies to use Dropbox to send like files back and forth, and there was like so much resistance.
Yeah, well, there's still resistance.
Really?
I remember just trying to get my California BLM permit. I put in under the they ask all kinds of questions like where do you store your files and things like that. They want to make sure that you have like a fireproof server room or something like that in your thing. And I was like, nah, I store everything on Dropbox. And there has been questions about Dropbox security in the past, but now Dropbox Business at the very least is end-to-end encrypted. I mean, if you send somebody something through Dropbox, it's encrypted on both ends, so it's actually really hard to break, and it's really, really good encryption. Dropbox has never been hacked. So there's that. Yeah. I mean, they've never had anything stolen that was important. Now, maybe, I don't know, they may have had like a password thing hacked where somebody got, but that's on different things. But your actual file servers, I've never heard about it happening. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but now, I mean, like, for example, when I store stuff in Dropbox on the California BLM permit, they came back to me and said, no, they don't have good enough security for us. We don't allow that, And I was like, and he said something about it being stored out of state too. And I was like, well, I'm in Nevada. You know that, right? So, I'm applying for a California BLM permit.
So it's already out of state.
It's already out of state. Plus, guess where Dropbox servers are?
California.
Friggin' San Francisco. Yeah. So, more as in-state as you can possibly get. So anyway, that was crazy. But nowadays, I mean, it's pretty secure. Yeah. And I don't see a problem with it.
Well, it's got to be more secure than your average BLM office. I once remember, I'm not going to say which town it was in, but I once remember going to the records room, and there was a zip drive. I'm like, holy crap.
Just like hanging out?
Yeah, it's like, this is how they store their stuff, on a zip drive. I'm like, wow. Are we sure it's 2015 or 16?
I know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Every time I go do a lit search at a different BLM, I'm amazed at some of the security procedures. Some of them have like, rooms where only 3 people have access to them, and you go in the room and you do the lit search there, you do the file search there. And some of them, there's a couple in this state right now that are in Nevada that are actually getting remodeled, so all their files are just kind of out in an area that's not secure at all. I mean, the file cabinets are locked up, but they just come over, they unlock it for you, and then you have access to all the stuff. But I don't know. It doesn't seem very secure. They want all this security. Oh, and then they'll just email you site forms too. Yeah. Like email? That's not secure. So,
well, how secure is NevChris still?
Well,
or have they improved it?
I don't know how secure NevChris as a platform is. And NevChris, for those who don't know, is the Nevada Cultural Resource Information System for file searches online. But they too, if you send in your files, your shape files, and you ask for a data package back, they do just email that stuff to you. So, again, email, not secure.
Oh, little hint. Change your default password.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I think that's changed now.
Lies.
I know. I don't know any anyway. So anyway, I think is there anything else that we need to cover from WWDC? I'd say don't buy the HomePod for field use.
No.
It's not waterproof. It looks kind of cool. It's got some pretty cool technology in it. I will say they're trying to bridge the gap between like high end. This is another thing I don't know. Okay, so like high end wireless speakers like Sonos.
Yeah.
And I've got the Sonos Play Bar, and it's amazing. I love it.
Ooh.
And so high-end speakers like Sonos, and then the kind of cheaper smart speakers like Amazon. I mean, you can get the Amazon Dot, which isn't even a speaker. It just like talks you to Amazon with it for like $50. But you get the Echo for like $150 or something like that. So it's pretty cheap. And the Google Home one is cheap too. Well, cheap-ish. But then the Apple one is $350. And everybody's like, screw you, Apple. Why's it got to be more expensive? Well, from what I can tell, again, I haven't heard it, but from what I can tell, they packed a phenomenal directional speaker system into a smart speaker.
I've heard that actually.
Yeah, so not only does it sound good, but it's actually smart too, and it will do all the things. Now, if it's and you can wirelessly pair another speaker with it. So if you bought two of them, you can have stereo, one on the left and one on the right, and then going like that. Now, Sonos hooks into my TV through an optical cable, but I can run wireless to all my Sonos stuff, and it actually runs not on Bluetooth but on Wi-Fi throughout the house. That's Sonos's difference, is it runs on Wi-Fi. My question with this quote high-end HomePod is, how does it connect? Is it Bluetooth? They mentioned using AirPlay 2, which they didn't mention a lot about. So I don't know how AirPlay 2 works or what's going on with that. Maybe that's Wi-Fi based now.
I mean, normally I'd be against that, but technically I just use my oh god, what's the little Mac Mini. Yeah, I just hook it up into my vintage hi-fi.
Nice.
And that's like my stereo.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that works.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know how many of these you can hook together. With Sonos, I don't know if there's a limit. You can run all these speakers together, and you can have ones in different rooms. You can have 10 speakers stacked on top of each other right there.
Neat.
And having them all play the same thing. Or you can say, I want speaker 1 to play this, speaker 2 to play this, speaker 3 to play this. Or however you have it set up. So They mentioned, like I said, pairing 2 HomePods, but I don't know if there's a limit. So, can you run them throughout your house? I can't imagine you wouldn't be able to. Otherwise, what's the point?
True.
But then again, this is halfway to a high-end speaker system and halfway to a smart speaker. They combined both of these things, so there's got to be some give and take. So I can't imagine you would outfit your house with HomePods and that'd be your only speaker setup.
Interesting.
But I don't know, maybe that's where Apple wants to go. Who knows?
So basically Siri everywhere.
Siri's always listening.
Yeah. Well, so was my phone until it bricked it up.
I know. So anyway, I'm about fresh out for WWDC. I'm glad we got to talk about it.
What?
So I know.
I thought Apple fans never ran out of ways to talk about Apple.
I could probably keep going. Keep going. But we need listener questions to drive it.
Bah.
I know. So
I just have to ask how good they look in turtlenecks.
My God, turtlenecks. I miss the turtlenecks. If you don't know what that means, then you're not a true Apple fanboy or girl. So
you know what's crazy? The bookstore I work at, like that Steve Jobs book, the big white one, where you have like 8 copies of it in stock at a time, and yet it keeps going out of the store. It's like I can't believe how popular that dude still is.
It's actually a good book. I've read it. Yeah.
Oh my God, all 800 pages or whatever.
The Walter Isaacson one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah, I read it when it came out. Yeah, it was good. It's a good book because, I mean, you don't have to like Apple. I also read like the Howard Schultz book, for example, the guy who founded Starbucks.
Neat.
Now it's not a book about Starbucks. It's a book about entrepreneurship, just like the Steve Jobs one is. It's a book about the concept of taking an idea. Well, Steve Wozniak's idea. It's a concept of taking an idea and marketing it and bringing it through that process. And that I love reading books about that. It's really, it's a biography, but it's a biography not of somebody in history. Like historical biographies are fun because you learn history, you learn how people did things. But the whole entrepreneurs are completely different ball of wax there. I mean, they're a completely different animal. And I love reading about how somebody decides to not only monetize their idea, but make it uber famous and popular,
Interesting.
It's like with Apple and both Apple and Starbucks, people accuse both of them of basically taking over the world and being everywhere. Starbucks especially, But neither of them have that as a goal. They're driven by customers.
See?
People keep buying their shit.
Interesting. See, too bad Tom King can't write a book about that except for CRM. Make CRM indispensable, as opposed to like the forgotten ology.
I know. And I think that's a problem of just education, which we try to fix with the Archaeology Podcast Network. We try to,
because how many people love preserving old buildings and yet don't think about us?
They don't equate the boots on the ground archaeologist with the History Channel and Discovery Channel and all the stuff that they see. They don't equate that.
And whose fault is that?
That's our fault.
No, it's not. Oh my God, it is? That's crazy.
I know, it's totally our fault. We need a Neil deGrasse Tyson, and all we have is an Indiana Jones. That's the problem. We need a champion on our side, a Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Carl Sagan. But like I said, all we have is Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones
is a grave robber.
He's a grave robber and a looter, but more than that, he's a fictional character.
That too.
And people know that about him. And people say, oh, I want to be an archaeologist so I could get chased by natives. And you might get chased by natives. I won't deny that.
That's true.
All these things. And that's not the reality.
See?
So we need somebody to make archaeology, great again. No, to make it sexy, like they've made science and physics and astronomy and things like that. People are interested in those things now, not as much as they should be, but they are.
Yeah.
And we need a spokesperson for archaeology. We need somebody that's out there like those guys are.
Yeah.
Doing the talks. I had a change of heart today, actually, because
Really?
I was listening to another podcast and I can't remember what it was, but I've kind of been going back and forth. This is right at the end of our show here, so I'll just kind of bring this out because I literally just thought about this today. I wrote a book, and you can hear chapters from it on Arc365 podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, arcpodnet.com/Arc365. I'm reading one.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll get through it by about October or so.
Oh, that's why it's by your computer.
Yes.
Oh.
So I've been doing chapters of that book. It's called The Field Archaeologist Survival Guide, and I wrote that as a guide for new people to use. But then over the last couple of years, I've been thinking, okay, it was really cool to see a book of mine, a book from a real publisher with my name on the spine, blah, blah, blah. That's great. But what good is this doing? It's maybe no money. Books unless you're writing Harry Potter, you're not going to make money on books anyway.
Yeah.
Tom King has a shelf of his books, and he'll be the first one to tell you it's not even his tertiary source of income.
Really?
I mean, you just don't make a lot of money, right?
Everyone has this book, though.
Well, yeah, but he gets 8% of every sale.
Oh.
Maybe 10 if he's lucky, but probably 8. So they sell that book for $50. He's not making a lot of money on every sale. Okay, so that's the problem. So my thought has always been, well, okay, I'm going to beef up these podcasts. That's where my content's going out. They're free. I'm not going to make any money anyway, so what's the difference? But this guy that I heard, and I think this is how we get our Neil deGrasse Tyson. We need people to actually write more books, because the one things books make you is they make you an expert in the field. Even in 2017, if you're an author, who did you say needs to legitimize archaeology? You said Tom King. Why did you say Tom King? Not because you've heard him on TV or the radio or a podcast, because you've read his books. You've been assigned his books in class.
Yeah.
He is an expert, an industry recognized expert, because he wrote books.
Yeah.
So we need people to write books that not glorify, but that's the wrong word, but that legitimize archaeology, that show who we are. We need books that are written about archaeologists, not about archaeology. So we need those kinds of books. So that person or those people will be the go-to people. That way, if Discovery Channel wants to actually do a show that's worth anything, the first place they're going to look is authors.
True.
It's the first place they're going to look. Right now they're looking at blogs and stuff because there are no books like that. So they're going to find those books. They're going to say, oh, this person's written 6 books on this topic. They must be the expert.
And more importantly, don't discount yourself, because people have contacted me to do video shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like just out of the blue. And I'm like, that's so weird. I'm not quite an expert yet.
I've been, because of my blog and probably because of the podcast as well. And Richie's got a YouTube channel that we'll link to in the show notes. And that's probably why he was contacted, because these people don't have the book. When they Google something, our stuff comes up, right? Cool. So and it's really cool. I mean, you Google archaeology podcast, and just about the only thing that shows up is the Archaeology Podcast Network, because we have 18 different shows on the internet. So,
neat.
We got all the stuff out there. So that's what we need. I would say, like I said, I've been kind of down on books before because they're not a good money maker, but it's not about making money for people. No. It's about getting the word out there. And more importantly, it's about identifying yourself as an expert. And whether you like it or not, if you're listening to this show, you're an expert in something. True. And you're probably an expert. If you get into the right room, you'll be the expert in that room. And since nobody knows about what we do, you put yourself in a room, let's call it a family reunion. At a family reunion, you're an archaeological expert because no one else knows anything about it.
Oh, and how many Archie Fantasy podcasts have I listened to where someone was an expert in archaeology because they had it on their business card?
Yes.
And they don't even have to spell archaeology correctly.
Probably. That's right. So anyway, I think that's about it for this show. Go out there and write some books. Thanks, Richie, for co-hosting Archaeotech.
Yeah, well, I was just down the street getting coffee anyway.
Nice. And maybe we'll have you on again when Windows announces.
Oh my God, Windows 11.
Something, whatever.
Windows 11 Spinal Tap Edition.
Nice. Nice. Google's got their event called Google I.O., which I never really watch.
Oh, that happened several weeks ago. Am I
was
wrong?
it already? Did it already happen?
I think it did.
Yeah, nobody watches it. It's like nobody goes to the Google store when they release a new phone because there is no Google store.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But I watch Android Authority.
Well, there you go.
See?
There you go. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Send in your questions to chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. We'll have some links in the show notes. I'll try to find the WWDC keynote. We'll link to Richie's YouTube channel. He's got some good stuff on there.
Sometimes.
And what's the name of that channel?
Happy Archaeology Fun Time.
Outstanding. So we'll have that on there. And hopefully stay tuned to the APN. Richie and I are working on another podcast, a brand new show.
Yeah.
That'll be a little more fun and conversational like this one was in this new studio we have here at the Reno Collective in Reno, Nevada. So, which used to be Granny's recording studio, where we're sitting in the same booth where the drummers for Dr. Dre, Eminem, Ozzy Osbourne, and a bunch of other big bands have recorded albums. So,
see, I want to be in the studio where Zach Wilde was playing his guitars.
Nice. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for hopefully some better audio recording because we're amping up the gear and the setup and
neat
and making everything better for you guys. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you next time. That's it for another episode of the Archaeotech Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/Archaeotech. If you like the show and want to comment, please do. You can leave comments about this or any other episode on the website or on the iTunes page for this episode. You can also email us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com or use the contact form on the podcast webpage. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website or tweet your questions with the hashtag Archaeotech or tag @ArchPodNet in your tweet. Please share the link to this show wherever you saw it. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can also type the name of the podcast into your favorite podcasting app and subscribe that way. Don't forget to go over to iTunes and leave a review of the show. It helps us get noticed so more people can find our podcast and benefit from the content. Also, send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. This show is produced by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.